ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear League Project. How the heck are you? Derrel Sims is with us today. This guy is literally a world-renowned expert with more research and information on alien abductions than anyone in the world, I would say, or just about. He's been doing this for 38 years. Mr. Sims is former CIA agent, military police as well. And we're going to be discussing a multitude of topics in relation to the ET phenomena. Now, I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Sims about 8 years ago. In that interview, it was extremely bizarre. It was a Skype show, and I was helping out an alternative forum. There was like a roundtable discussion, and all these weird sounds were coming in during the interview, these weird whoosh, whoosh, and whoo, whoo. It was just very strange. So if you've seen the miniseries by Steven Spielberg, Taken, when I talked to him about 8 years ago, I said, what you're describing to me sounds like something out of this miniseries. And he said, well, where do you think they got the idea? And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, okay, this makes sense. So, Mr. Sims, it's just an honor to speak with you here at the Leak Project. A lot of people really excited to hear what you have to say. There's a lot of people that listen to this program that are searching for the truth, that have had these weird encounters that have happened in their lifetime, whether it's an ET, whether it's an interdimensional, whatever you want to call them, demons, fallen angels, certainly an entity that you wouldn't explain of this world. So thank you for coming on the show. How the heck are you?
I'm fine and delighted to be here. And it sounds like you got an incredible audience.
Absolutely. It's really exciting. I get schooled every single day from the live chat when we do shows here, and also in the comment section. People are like, hey, Rex, check this out. Or here's another dot to connect with the information. And one thing, Mr. Sims, is with the research that I've done in regards to ancient scriptures, whether it's the Sumerian stuff, talking about the Anunnaki, whether it's the Holy Bible, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, even the secret doctrine that I just read that talked about the boneless ones that were here before physical bodies. I definitely see this underlying theme of extraterrestrial influence. And whether they were here before us or, they created us like in the Bible it describes, I don't know. But there's just so much going on there. And I do see these interesting underlying themes. So I wanted to get into this. And if you would, for the audience that maybe hasn't heard of you before, please give just a quick background on who you are and what led you to, researching these extraterrestrial abductions.
My background is relatively simple. I was a captive audience at age 4. That's when I first noticed them, and that was 1952, and had a very bizarre abduction event there. My abductions went on for 13 years. At age 17, they ended violently and ceased. I thought it was all over for me. That was great and wonderful. Then the problem is they came back and got my son when he was 6 years old. And that changed me from a victim to the alien hunter. Now I hunt them that hunted me and are out there hunting some of the people in your audience. The second part of the issue is I bring a heavy background from a military and police investigative level. I'm a former military police officer for 3 years, 2 years in Central Intelligence Agency and corporate operations. I'm a master hypnotherapist. I'm a hypnotic anesthesia therapist, which means I take people to surgery using hypnotic anesthesia without anesthesia, without a chemical anesthesia. And I guess the last thing is I'm a master level NLP, and I use all these skills and other things, including handwriting analysis, to analyze these abductees' experiences to see whether or not they're lying, telling the truth, fabricating, hallucinating, wannabes, or whatever. But the fact is, I find most of them are, in fact, truthful. They just don't know or don't understand what's happened to them, and they're trying to find answers.
Yeah, they're looking for answers. And let me ask you this. A friend of mine that's had a lifetime of abductions and contacts, as well as her family, her kids, her mom, her sister, etc., and also bizarre things that you would say, that sounds like my labs or something. Have you ever heard about anybody drinking something that was like metallic in one of these encounters, like waking up and getting after they tasted it, it left a metallic taste in their mouth? Have you ever done hypnosis with anybody like that?
You don't have to do hypnosis with them. Hypnosis is one of the last things we will ever do with anyone. the minute you, unfortunately, there are people out there in the UFO field, and they tell you to go out and find a hypnotist and get all this done. That's the worst advice you can get. And I'm a master
They can implant the
hypnotherapist.
memories in your mind, right?
What a master hypnotherapist is a person who certifies these people that are giving all this advice. In other words, if you're going to get your degree in your certificate in hypnotherapy as a clinical hypnotherapist, I'd be the type of person you would come to get certified, get trained under, and so on. But the fact is that, and the reason you want to do hypnosis last and never first is because that's the first bullet that's going to be fired at your case. They'll say you were hypnotized by that guy or that girl, and they made you believe all this stuff, and none of your stuff is true. It's all made up. It's a fabrication of your own mind. So the answer to your question, however, is that you don't have to hypnotize somebody to figure this stuff out. The fact is that the metallic taste that people often report in their mouth is some of them have been asked to drink a certain liquid, and if the alien does it, it usually is so bad that it'll make you throw up within a minute, and it leaves a fluorescent. The inside of your mouth will be bright white after that's over. So you want to check these people immediately thereafter their event if they've been forced to drink something like this, which will often make you throw up, and they take the remains of that, of course. And you'll find the inside of their mouth is fluorescent. And when I say fluorescent, I don't mean just bioluminescent. I mean fluorescent. You can't get it off. You can't wash it off. It won't come off in any way, shape, or form. The body will absorb it. It's subdermal on contact whenever they either touch you or if they make you drink this type of chemical liquid I'm talking about.
Could you describe the first experience you had?
My first experience is I was simply, it was wintertime. I got put to bed by my mother, just going, ready to go to sleep. And back in 1952, there were no alien movies or no aliens or no anything. Nobody knows anything. Whoever had events back then kept their big mouth shut and didn't talk about any of this, or you'd end up in a psych ward. Nobody would believe it. There are only two places to put that information, so to speak, back in those times. If you're a Christian, it would have to be the devil, and if you weren't a Christian, you would know what to do with it. So I think they got the Christian aspect of it, got it right. It is evil. It's very wrong. There's a lot of things wrong with this stuff. I can show you cases from over 50 years of people from human mutilations, cattle mutilations, animal mutilations, and contact of all kinds, so-called good contact, bad contact, and so on. In my case, it was not upsetting to me at all. I simply sensed something was wrong in my room and opened my eyes, and I sat up in the bed and looked at this skinny little guy walking toward the wall. And I thought, he's going to bump into the wall. What is that? It's so cold. Where's his clothes? I'm thinking all these weird things, why? What's he doing in my room? And of course, when it turns around, the skinny little thing didn't have any clothes on. And I noticed the huge black eyes. And back then in 1952, they were using a different model. To me, these entities are models. They're not aliens from another world. They're simply models that have been hatched, cloned, manufactured, and made for the purpose of interaction with mankind, for the purpose of causing people to believe whatever whopper they want to feed you. And in each race or each population they've ever been involved with, from Islamic people to the American Indian or Irish, they create a new story, a new whopper that they tell each different generation, and hoping that you'll buy into it. And of course, the next, you go to another country and it's the same story, but it's a different lie. So anyway, the bottom line is—
Can I ask you a question on that real quick, Derrel?
Yes.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt. I think it's important towards that point. Like the Anunnaki that are described. I've read through a lot of these Sumerian tablets, not the Zechariah Sitchin translations, but the actual tablets, Oxford University, and it describes Enki and his counterpart like manipulating humans, creating humans. And is that kind of what are they the Anunnaki real? I mean, is that what you're picking up on, these people that are making all these different clones and beings and stuff?
Well, I think for your audience's point of view, and this may be a big chunk to bite off, so to speak, and it may not make a lot of sense to some of your audience because they're not familiar with my work. But basically, from my point of view, there are 7 primary models, and that's the so-called Nordic, the gray, the doctor type, the Bigfoot, and so on. Each and every one of these, and the reason I'm saying this, I'm not saying this because I have a different point of view, and so therefore it's probably correct because it's mine. It's probably correct because of DNA that we do have, and other evidence that I've had for over 30 some years supports it. So until something else better comes along to disprove it, it'll stand the time. But in effect, in my view, and well, to go back. When you go back to the ancient documents, and I just came back from India not long ago, did an implant surgery there. And one of the second reasons I was there, besides the implant surgery, was to study the history and some of the gods and demagogues of the Indian culture. And when you look at all of this and compare it with ancient Warkan, Sumerian, and ancient biblical and Hebrew literature, you pretty much come up with the same story. You have a different flavor, so to speak, because you've got different cultures. But in my opinion, the big storyline is the following. There was a great war in heaven. Somebody got kicked out, and the biblical version refers to him as Lucifer and so on. The other versions have different, it doesn't matter what you call it. The point is there was a war in heaven. And I don't mean in outer space. And somebody got kicked out. So the question is, when you kick out a third of heaven, where do they go? Well, if I were them and I were mad at you for kicking me out, you were God and you kicked me out of the program, the first thing I'm going to do is find out where your favorite location is out there in space, which is probably a big blue marble that you picked out a really special place where you made all these interesting people called humans. And I'm going to go there and just wreak havoc if I can. I'm going to mess your stuff up. So that to me would be the simplest view. And Sitchin and others have, it's almost the same story. It's just different words describing the characters. It doesn't matter to me what names you put on the characters. The fact is, there was a huge split, and the scientists say that there could be, based on Drake's equation, there could be millions, and according to the view of the people in India, there could be 200,000 different races out there in space. I'm not arguing any of that. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter how many there are 2 camps. That's the point. One versus the other. And one can decide which one they want to belong to or be a part of or whatever. But if you ignore that big fact, you miss a big chunk of information about what this ancient data you're referring to is referring to itself. And this is pretty amazing stuff. And the bottom line to me is that the ones that fell, the ones that came here, later created, hatched, cloned, or manufactured or made the so-called alien for interaction with mankind. The alien is not the problem. They're just doing their job. They don't have a clue. The ones who made, hatched, manufactured, or cloned them, I assure you, they do have a clue, and you will rarely ever see them. It's very, very rare to ever see them. You will hear them mentioned occasionally in ancient Hebrew, Warkan, Sumerian, and other literatures. You will see that. And it'll usually be through a different name. But what you're often getting there is the actual fallen angelics' names and or their offspring called the Nephilim, which were a byproduct of interaction, sexual interaction with mankind, and produced races of giants. In fact, several of them, specifically Emim, the Anakim, the Zanzumim, these were races of giants that appeared at least 2 different times in history. And that's just a matter of record.
So when you talk about these fallen angels, and I've done a lot of research as well, I'm really glad you bring them up, and the monsters that came from some of these mergers of beings. This was described also. I don't know if you've read the Secret Doctrine written by Blavatsky, where she translates these ancient stanzas from the Book of Zion, which is supposed to predate, anything in the Bible. And it talks about these different beings that were created that didn't have the entire spirit. And sometimes they didn't have a mind like we do. They had more of an animal mind, and they were like walk-ins as well. They would actually walk into these bodies that you'd think of a possession. And the more research and what I've been doing is compiling it all together, kind of like connecting these dots around the world. It seems like we're in a farm right now. This is like a zoo, and they're manipulating the entire system. They're manipulating the medical mafia industrial complex. They're manipulating many people in high positions of power in governments and corporations, and they're kind of getting their own stuff out of it. So would you agree with that?
Well, I can agree with in part. Because it's obvious that there are two major camps, and let's rather than take 14 different versions out there, let's take one primary version that most of us are generally familiar with. And again, if people have a different view or have different names they want to put on it, I don't have any argument with that. But if you take the biblical view, you have God's position in heaven, and you have outer space, which is referred to as the second heaven. So to speak, let's use that. The second heaven, you have outer space, and then you've got, you say, well, that's where all these aliens come from, or whoever, or that all these angelic beings live out there on different planets. They may. That's possible. But the fact is, what we have found and what NASA has found, whether they want to admit it or not, but if you look at the data and if you dig deep enough, you'll find craft, and we actually have a film of one of them. It's approximately 50 miles thick and 600 miles across. Now, if you have a craft that big, you kind of don't need a planet. You can kind of move your business around anywhere you want to. And in my opinion, on that massive craft that we've had 8 people on in a mass abduction in December 8th, 1992, they describe a wealth of information of their experience and some two entities that showed up on that massive craft that do not normally show up they don't show up in UFO literature. I call them mid-level management. They're the beings, they're between the angelic and between the fallen angelic and the alien. And when they showed up on that craft, every alien, including Bigfoot, everything on there was scared to death of them, because there was a problem where they had screwed up, basically. My point is that there's very little latitude for mistakes, and they're not given to forgiveness and that sort of thing. But I think on a higher realm, from the angelic point of view, a fallen angelic point of view, I think by the same token, not only do they affect are they behind and part and parcel to the alien phenomena, but they are in fact part of the various horrific agendas of that seem to be beyond mankind, that man seems to have actually gone beyond his own level of understanding and trying to control the world. And this has gone on as long as man has been here. Someone's always tried to take over. And you've got different organizations doing the same thing. But in my opinion, this is man thinking he's in charge and he's doing his big business and he's in charge. And you can call it anything from the Illuminati to anything else. The point is someone else is behind it moving. They're just puppets being moved by something bigger and a lot smarter than they are.
Absolutely. And I've also wondered if these mid-level management beings could be the gods that were mentioned in some of the ancient texts, Isis, Inanna. And I know you're not really into names and labels, but is the reason I bring this up is maybe the people are seeing this back in that time and they're writing it down. They're like, oh, wow, look at this. They're looking at them as gods or whatever, but they're mid-level management.
Well, the interesting thing, Iana, the goddess Iana, has large black eyes. If you actually ever see a drawing of her sculpture, she has large black eyes. And you will see some of these beings are absolutely phenomenal. You look at the monkey being and others in India, in monkey god and so on, Hunanan. And when you start making your notes, you realize, well, who in the world made all this stuff? the drawing back behind you right there on your own wall, where you see the Egyptian, the human body with the head of a stork or of a Horus or any of these others. In my opinion, these were transgenic beings that were made, hatched, cloned, manufactured for the purpose of interaction with mankind, and they are in fact higher than the alien. There are different levels of this thing. It's not just is there an alien situation out there or whatever. It's much bigger than people even imagine, and most people are so stuck in their own little area of research, like the gray or the Nordic or whatever, or Bigfoot, that they can't see a big picture at all, which is fine with me. I mean, I don't belittle anybody for do the best you can with the resources that you have.
Well, to think that these beings that you're seeing are cloned, and if you could hit the mute button when I talk, just because the echoing is really bad there. Thank you very much. When you talk about these cloned beings, the technologies that we have now, like they literally are the public information. You can look this up. This isn't very old. They made an egg to full maturity from stem cells, a human egg. And that's what they're telling us about publicly. And that's in the laboratories here. So these clone beings, I think, is fascinating. And I wonder if these mid-level management or higher management could actually look through the eyes of these clone beings and look through their consciousness, similar to you have a drone now and you've got augmented reality glasses on and you're flying that drone around, but you can't see it with your physical eyes, but you can with these things. Maybe they're doing the same thing with these drones. They're like physical drones to do their work. And would you describe these different beings for the audience? Because the different models that you talk about, the Corvette model.
Certainly, I will do that, and then I'll answer your excellent presentation of is it possible that they do this? The alien has its job. They do whatever they're supposed to do. Whatever they are, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's the gray, it doesn't make any difference. The gray has an IQ of about 80. They're about the IQ of a moron. That's the reason they can't get your clothes on right when they send you back, and people can't figure out why I'm wearing your clothes and you're wearing mine. When we both got taken, they don't get it. They really don't. And the fact is that the next level up is one that looks just like the little gray, except in fact he is a doctor type. He has got an IQ of about 140. He's a lot smarter than the gray. He does not tolerate mistakes. In fact, the little grays get scared to death if they do make a mistake, because he may have them to take a step out and have a breath of fresh air out in space. And that's the end of their little career. So they have a great deal of fear over that. The next level is a being that is referred to as the Nordic, and it's a human hybrid is what it is. It's something, again, that's been, again, where do you get all the DNA for all these beings? This Bigfoot, the human, the praying mantis being, well, the DNA comes from here, of course. It didn't come from another planet. I mean, what planet are you going to go to find a DNA for a praying mantis? What planet are you going to go to find the DNA of a simian, an ape? Probably planet Earth. The fact is, if you look at every one of the usual suspects, as I call them, when you look at them and you look at the DNA on Earth, obviously this is the Walmart place for everybody to shop out there to come do their DNA work. And there's a history behind this as well. The history is that this is not the first time this has been noted in history. If you go back in history and using, again, the Bible as an example, you'll find books that are mentioned in the Bible that are not necessarily part of it, but are good, credible books that are mentioned, like the books of the Wars of the Lord, or the book of Edo the Seer, the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher describes actual transgenic beings being created and how it upset God, if you want to buy into this narrative. And the beings that did it were the fallen ones, the fallen beings, the fallen angelics, and they did this to provoke the Lord of heaven. So that again, it goes back to, messing around with his creation, his stuff, and where he clearly says not to the blood of and the flesh of birds and beasts and different things and humans. These are all different flesh, and what they're doing is making again. creating and hatching. It's like that picture on the back of your wall back there of the human and the bird is an illustration. These are just examples of things that actually did occur in times past. Those were not Egyptians who went back and, oh, well, let's just paint a picture of a strange looking guy. No, they're painting a picture of somebody they had met.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because when you look at the ancient cuneiform tablets, when you look at the Egyptian hieroglyphics, I've gone through the Book of the Dead. And I've got to say this, Derrel, I read many of these spells from the Book of the Dead. I mean, I picked up a copy on Amazon, and one of the scariest dreams that I've ever had was after I started reading this book, and the way that they had everything aligned with the pyramid and where it was located on the planet, and the apex and the size of the Cheops pyramid, everything seemed to be so detailed that I think they were doing some pretty far out stuff. And I wonder if, like you just said, that Thoth behind me that's been written about for thousands of years could have been the Ajiji people, the bird people that were discussed. But these ancient stories and these ancient depictions show these beings that just look far out. Lion people, bird people, beings that are all sorts of different creatures formed into one. So where'd they go? I mean, are they still out there, but now they're just kind of observing the zoo on this ship? They're like, look at those silly sheep. Let's feed them some more Biggie Macs and put some, I don't know, nasty nano goblins in it, so it'll rewrite their gut and it'll vaccinate them from the inside out. And I'm just digressing. I'm sorry.
Well, some of the answer to that, some of the partial answer to that can be looked at the petroglyphs of Native American Indians. If you think of the 45% of our abductees are Native American Indian Irish, and that includes the Turks in Turkey. It doesn't matter. 45% will be Native American Indian Irish or Celtic. My point is that if you look at the petroglyphs carefully, and a lot of them, you'll see some of these strange looking beings, some of them alien-like and some others with different names. It doesn't matter. It's the same guys that we're looking at. It's just a different name on it. It's just like, taking a Corvette Stingray to 14 different countries and in 10 different time periods. You're going to get a different name for it, but it's still the same car. It doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. But when you look at some of these petroglyphs, you'll actually see some of these entities stealing sheep or rams from the Native Americans and taking them up into their craft. I mean, this stuff is the idea of animal mutilation. So it's been around forever. This is stuff they've been doing. They've been manipulating the DNA of some of these animals and mixing it with even humans. And Thoth is one example. Horus is another. And the Egyptians often painted them at huge sizes and so on. The reason is because, and the reason that temple was so big and so magnificent that they built it, that only Pharaoh got to go once a year to visit the gods when they came down, is because that's what they looked like, and there they were. And he was the one that got to see the show, and the rest of those folks didn't get to. So it was his consciousness they were interested in, because if they can deal with him, they can affect that whole population. He will do whatever they say. It's that simple. The second part of your question before was the sense there's a manipulation of the alien, or the 7 different flavors, so to speak, including the reptile, which is the worst of the whole lot, and he's generally in charge of the show when he shows up, is the fact that the ones who are behind the show, behind the alien, actually use the alien on rare occasions as an avatar. And they sometimes will be working in rare cases in hypnosis, and the being will actually come through, and he will, the alien's not involved, but not the abductee or any of them. And it's fascinating to get to, it's interesting because they're not easy, that's not the right word. They are not beyond flaw. And you can irritate them very well if you ask them the right questions, and they'll get mad and take off. They'll get upset. But the fact is, they sometimes will use the alien as an avatar. And let me underscore this very quickly for your audience, because I think this is going to be real interesting to some. And I've had people, they often ask me, is there any way to do self-defense in any way? I said, well, of course there is. And I said, there's nothing that's ultimately going to be perfect every time, blah, 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 and save you from everything. But the fact that no more than if you go down the street, will I never be attacked if I pray a good prayer or something? I don't think that's the answer, so to speak. My point is that most of the time these entities they have their own orders. They're doing whatever they're supposed to. And they are not, quote unquote, spiritual beings. They aren't. The alien simply, and he's made, hatched, cloned, manufactured. In fact, anybody that's actually touched them, felt them, and been close to them, many of the people that have done that will tell you right off the bat, especially if they're sensitive in any sense of the word spiritually, the first thing they'll tell you, they'll look at you and say, oh, they have no soul. Well, duh, I'm glad you figured that out. The point is being used by someone else. That's the point. So they're doing their task, but in rare occasions, the one behind it will actually use them as an avatar. In other words, he's in charge and he's present. So here you have a Christian as an example, and they're saying, well, or anybody, and they're saying, I'm going to use the name of Jesus and I'm going to do this, or I'm going to try to protect myself. And the gray stand there looking at them like they're crazy because he didn't have a clue. He didn't get it. He just doesn't care. It doesn't mean anything to him because he is not a spiritual being, a part of the network, so to speak. He's made, hatched, and cloned, and manufactured. It's like talking to your computer. If I tell my computer in the name of Jesus, will you leave me alone or turn yourself off or turn yourself on? Probably not. However, if the one that's using the avatar, using the alien, so to speak, is there, and you have any spiritual authority, you're going to get a real surprise. He's going to boogie. He will not like that at all. You'll find out very quickly he's not the quote unquote high level being from another planet that you thought he was. He's something else. You got to go back to the two sides, and then it makes sense. That's just my point of view.
No, that's incredible. And also with that said, Derrel, does it necessarily matter about the name? You know, people say, or just it sounds to me like it's more of just the spiritual belief that you have of there being a higher power versus just Jesus, correct?
Well, and again, this is, I didn't come at the UFO phenomenon or any of this from a spiritual point of view from the beginning. It's gotten me here. 38 years, I started with the medical scientific. We've done 25 surgeries. We've done all kinds of things. We've gotten the alien to respond to us in some very ugly ways. And we've got them to respond to us instead of them picking us up, so to speak. And by that, I mean the most effective things that seem to be effective, longer range, seems to be people who have authority on a high level in spiritual matters. And to answer your question, and some people are going to want a kind of an illustration. In the New Testament, the 7 sons of Sceva were trying to, these were exorcists. They were not Christians, of course. They were just casting out demons back then in the name of Solomon, because Solomon had tampered with spiritism and so on, and he got in trouble doing it. But the point is, he was a absolute brilliant mind. And so they were using this to cast out demons, using the name of Solomon to do that. And then they found some that they couldn't cast out. It didn't work. So they said, they found one, and they looked at this man that was possessed, and they said, we adjure you by Jesus, whom Paul preaches, the Apostle Paul, who he preaches, to get out. And the spirit looked at him and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? And then the scripture says he attacked them and wounded them and tore their clothes off and sent them naked running in the streets. The fact is, there are different types of entities out there, and they're very powerful. And some of them are very dangerous. Some of them are not. Some of them are almost benign in their power. But the fact is that if a person, I don't think just quote unquote using the name of Jesus as an example, or the name of Solomon or whatever. I think if you have no spiritual background or knowledge to come from. I think you're shooting in the dark. Do whatever you can. Use the name of Buddha. But it's just weird to me. You can walk into a room full of people. I go to the Olympics and they give you a microphone and say Buddha. Nobody cares. Muhammad. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Iana. But when you say the name Jesus, I'm telling you, people are either going to get upset, happy, or quiet. It's really weird. And it's just funny to me. I find that whole thing amusing. But the bottom line is that I think that a person should be spiritually equipped and if you're going to tamper with this. But if you're dealing with the alien, you're not dealing with something spiritual. You're dealing with him, and he's a surrogate of something else that is.
Could you share with us some of the spooky experiences that you had where they were actually communicating with you, and kind of put us in the room with you and describe it to us?
One lady, this is a typical story, and I'm not picking on anybody. I mean, I'm an abductee. Many people are contactees. But the difference between the two is an abductee is a person who feels like that they were taken without their permission. They were kidnapped, basically, and it was wrong, and so on. Contactee basically believes the experience was either positive, and if it wasn't, it probably was for my best or highest good, and therefore it's okay. And I consider contactees like honeybees. They don't realize the funny little man out there in a white suit with the large black eyes is stealing your honey. You can say he's there for your highest good, but he's still stealing your honey. Now the problem is when the funny little man with the black eyes comes around to the killer bee or the abductee, you're probably going to get hurt or get in trouble. They're not going to give that honey up very easily. Killer bees like to fight, and abductees like to resist. They don't like being taken. They don't like it. So in one of these cases, I was speaking at the International Forum for New Science. I just had presented a paper on implants for the International Forum for New Science in Colorado. And a lady came by and she was pulling behind her a little oxygen tank, and I've known her for many years. And she says, "Mr. Sims, I would like for you to hypnotize me." I said, "Whatever for, young lady?" And she said, "Well, I'm about to die and I'm on my last leg here and I'm literally dragging an oxygen bottle behind me." And I said, "Okay." She said, "I am a contactee." I said, "I know exactly who you are." And I said, "What's the problem?" She says, "Well, they called me like I was like a little Johnny Appleseed here to spread all their information and their story and how good they are and how wonderful they are. They're going to save the planet and fix the ozone hole and do all these wonderful things. And they're going to tell me the big truth before I die. Here I am almost dead and they haven't told me anything." And I said, "In your case, I'll make an exception. Yes, I'll work with you." So my friend that was with me, she was helping me present the paper. She was assistant professor at Washington State University. And anyway, she went with me, and I always take a second person when I work with someone in hypnosis, if I ever do. And long story short, regressed her back to her very first event where she met the blue man. Like the guy in, like the one that Avatar speaks about in the movie, the guy that made Avatar. He said, "I made the movie after the ones that I saw originally, the blue people." Well, she saw the blue being. And in this case, just another model. It's just a different color. It doesn't matter what it is. So she's telling me about this. And as she's talking and describing everything, she said, "Oh my God. Oh, it's wonderful. He's here." She's so excited. And he begins to speak through her. And I said, and I started asking him questions. And he kept saying things like, "Why are you questioning me? Why? We're here to do all these wonderful things." And I kept asking all the wrong questions, and I would not get off of it. And finally, he got mad and left. And she says, "I don't understand that. I've never seen him mad In over 60 years I've been alive, he's always been happy and jovial and wonderful. And he hates you. Why does he hate you? I said, well, that's a real good question. You might want to ask yourself about that. So the bottom line was, she was horrified that he never would, because the big question I asked him is, why don't you tell her the big answer to why you're really here right now? And since I'm here, I think I'll back up your information or verify it or not, or simply tell you you're lying. Well, that's when he boogied. But the fact is, he never told her information, and she later died. And as best I know, never found the truth out of why they're here. And they're not going to tell you. The answer you're going to get is a lie. And it's just the truth to them. It's just a lie that hadn't been told yet. Which one do you want to hear?
Yeah, why would they tell you if they're slow boiling you? You know, it's like, put the frog in there, slow boil. He won't know. It'll be okay. That's spooky, man. And you know, it makes me even think about the possibility of the light when you pass. You know, some people are under the hypothesis, you know, under the theory, if you go to the light, that's just your recycling center. That's you're gonna be brought right back. You're gonna forget. That's not going to allow you to go to the next level. And you know, I'm still definitely agnostic towards that. But when you bring up these beings and making, you know, like literally taking over people, this stuff's talked about in scriptures that were written thousands and thousands of years ago. So it's fascinating that you can take this stuff that was talked about, the ancients, and people look at that as just highly concentrated swamp gas from Uranus. But in reality, there's a lot of gems in there, and you're connecting that with now in technology. And I would we've got over 1,000 people watching. This is awesome. I would love to hear about the implants that you have seen and, you know, kind of overseen as well, a part of these surgeries and stuff. If you could share that with us, that'd be awesome.
May I do something? Answer one other thing, kind of clean up one little area I've not
Please.
cleaned up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll go immediately into implants. I'm glad to. I'll answer any questions that you have. There is a world of difference between a person being possessed by a spirit and being influenced by an alien. The definition of a spirit is a disincarnate. It's a being it's disincarnate. It has no body. And and again, I'm going to have to go back to the ancient text here. In the ancient text, even in the book of Isaiah, it talks about the Raphim, and it's a generic term describing all the giants. And he says, the Raphim will not rise in the resurrection. What that basically means is that when they died, when they were killed off, when a person, from a Christian point of view or other, if you die, you went somewhere. I mean, you look at the body, and whoever was in there is gone. I mean, you don't bury somebody alive; you bury somebody because they're dead. So the question is, where'd the person go? Well, you know, it doesn't matter wherever you want to, whatever belief you have. You know, they went to heaven, they went to another planet, whatever. You know, from my point of view, you got two. Again, it's a war. You got two choices. you can make your own decision there. But the fact is that these beings, when they lost their bodies, they're still here, according to the prophet Isaiah. He said, these beings are still here, and they're looking for a body to inhabit. And that's the ones you often see in the New Testament that possess someone. The alien doesn't possess anyone. It has a body. It's about control. They're here to either harvest your emotions, sexual passions, anger, fears, etc., etc. They do that for a reason, because they're told to. They don't do it because they like to. They're doing it because they're told to by somebody bigger and other than them who feeds off of this stuff. That ought to tell you a lot about whoever's running their show. They're pretty sick. So the bottom line is that, so I want this real clear to your audience, that if a person, I've seen 3 cases of demon possession in my lifetime, 2 in Korea when I stayed there for a year in the military, and 1 in the United States. And I assure you, it had nothing to do with aliens. Whatever that thing was, it was in there. It was supernatural. It had supernatural power. And that's a long story, and I won't get into that now. But the point is, there's a world of difference between alien interfering with your life or abducting you and a person and a spirit being possessing you. There's a world of difference, and it's very clear in the New Testament as well. So now to the implants, if you like. The implants, the best way to think about that in my from my perspective, for your audience, is that there are for lack of a better term, visible and invisible implants. And by that, I mean a visible implant is something that's embedded or found inside someone that's been installed by the alien and or an intelligence community, as an example. We have not found, quote unquote, any that the intelligence community or some corporation or someone has done. We're looking for them. We found some things that are quite interesting. They look similar to an RFID chip. The problem, if it is an RFID chip, it doesn't make any sense because an RFID chip has a range of about like 5 feet maximum. So that doesn't make any sense. If it's an RFID chip, it doesn't make any sense. It's not it. So let's deal with primarily the alien thing here first. The alien installs implants in people, and I want the audience to understand this because I discovered this in 1960 at age 12 in my own event in an abduction scenario. I was conscious during the time. I saw what they did, I saw how they did it, and I saw where they placed it, and so on and so on. My point is that implants are very rare. And every abductee I meet, every contactee I meet, and I'll get 50 letters from people, and every one of them will say, oh, I have probably an alien implant. Some people say, I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. You don't. If you have one, an implant of this nature, it will show up on X-ray, MRI, CAT scan, this sort of thing, in 99.99999% of cases. They're very rare to have, and most people, and I look at hundreds of X-rays every year, and yes, I will look at your X-rays. If you want to scan them and send them to me on email, I'll be glad to look at them. We have medical doctors that work with us, have a medical team, but I guarantee you no medical doctor that works with me will ever agree to remove an implant, any object out of you if I don't think it's an implant, because they don't have a clue, and I do. I was there and they weren't. They're just doctors of the mechanics that remove this stuff, so to speak. They're the mechanics that help us to understand how to deal with this on that level. But basically, the implants are not tracking devices. They're not transponders. They're not any of those things that you read on the internet. Quit reading stuff on the internet and just simply write me and say, what are they? And I'll be glad to tell you. Or you can get my book and figure it out. But I'm not here to argue with anybody. If you want to think they're here to track you or whatever, that's fine. But the fact is, if you're an abductee or contactee, I assure you, you didn't get here with an implant. They already knew who you were. They knew where you were. They knew your lineage, and they've been following it for some time. Particularly if you're Native American, Indian, and Irish. That's going to happen.
Well, everything's real on the internet, Derrel. I mean, everything that you read on the internet's true, and you should never question the internet because it's all real. And
I know Abraham Lincoln said that himself.
Totally being sarcastic. I hope you guys know that. I mean, seriously, you need to cross-reference things. The internet's great. I mean, I do love the internet because you can get information from all around the world, but you have to cross-reference what you're finding. And you've been doing this for 38 years. You've seen what an implant looks like. And, you know, when I just watched parts of Patient 17, which was a very interesting documentary, Dr. Lear had been a part of a bunch of implant removals as well. He's no longer with us. But this one implant, they described all these different elements that were in this implant. And they said, you know, we don't understand how they could all be put in this one spot. And it would be, it could be used as something it's highly toxic, but it's also highly, there was a word specifically that it could be tracked. They didn't say it was a tracking device, but the way that they described it, it sounded like something that if they were close enough, they could use some type of scanning mechanism or something to pick up on it. I don't know. Are you familiar with that? Derrel?
Yeah, I've got it. I was to comment about Roger Lear started under me many years ago. He did not believe any of this stuff. He thought this was all a lie and a hoax and everything else. He did the first foot surgery because he was a foot surgeon. He was not, in fact, an MD. He's a foot doctor, and they can only operate on the foot. And he operated on the foot on I conducted the first implant surgery, 2 of them, in Camarillo, California. And after that surgery, he became a believer. The problem with Roger was that some of our implants started disappearing and our evidence started disappearing under his care. And when that happened, I got pretty upset. And long story short is I fired him. And I did it nicely because I did not want a scandal, and just asked him to step down, and he graciously did. Later, he was busted by the state of California. This is a matter of medical record if anybody wants to look it up. And I'm not picking on him here. I'm just telling you why I departed from him. Some of the work he did was very good. Some of the work he did was terrible. And on some of the internet, you'll see videos of him. But if you'll look at the videos very carefully, the videos, many of them are my own videos that are copyrighted, that he copied and took things and mixed and matched data and evidence from several different surgeries. And it's not even the same stuff. Some of the implants, so-called implants, are not even implants at all, but it doesn't sell if they're not implants. So you make them implants. And that's one of the reasons I canned him. I will not allow that kind of stuff. But and that's all I want to say about him. And I liked him as a person. I did not like the way he went after the money, and that's what he was about to me. And I'm sorry. I just the first person we did implant surgery on, just contacted me the other day. She contacted me and said, Derrel, I haven't seen you in over 20 years. And I said, well, we're going to interview you. You're the first implant surgery you did. And that's the one that Roger took, the one out of the foot. She said, I got bills from him for over 10 years. I said, sweetie, I paid for everything personally. I paid for your medication. I paid for your flights to California. I paid for everything that was done. Everything, your hotel stay, everything, you and the other man there. You should have never got a bill from anybody because it was all paid for by me. She said, I got a bill from him for 10 years. I just found that out 2 days ago. I mean, I almost fell over. So Roger did stuff like that, and I don't know why, but neither here nor there. But the bottom line is that the patient 17 appears to be a very good case, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. I would love to meet the patient 17 because I assure you, I have a lot of answers to questions that he asked, and no one has been able to give him an answer for yet. And if I meet him, I would be delighted to speak with him.
Right on. Maybe I can reach out as well and get an interview between both of you. That'd be an awesome show. You know, I want to ask you a question about the possible mantis beings, and I've had an opportunity to speak to you before, and I remember something really bizarre when I was just a toddler, and I mean, it could have been a dream. It seemed like I was looking at life-size Star Wars figures in the crib, and they were the best way to describe it is like go to the scene if you've watched Return of the Jedi, the scene where there's like those insectoid-looking things, and they're playing instruments while they're before Jabba the Hutt, Jabba the Hutt and stuff like that. That's what I thought I saw, and I'm literally freaking out just thinking about it. And I talked to my parents and I was like, "What? Do we have life-size Star Wars figures?" they're like, "What are you talking about?" So it's just the most bizarre thing, and I asked people about it. They said, "Well, maybe it was like a mantis being or something like that." I don't know what they were, but have you ever had anybody talk to you that said they saw something like that when they were in a crib? And I don't get any bad vibes. I mean, they were just like staring at me. What I remember, they were just kind of like looking at each other, just observing. No, nothing bad or spooky about it. It was just a fascinating experience. But like I said, it could have been just a dream. I don't know.
Yes. One of my policing skills is to observe people. Often I'll have them fill out our 20-page form, and I'm looking at their handwriting, of course, because I'm analyzing that, but I'm listening to them and watching them very carefully. I watched you very carefully as you described your experience. You actually went back to a real event when you were a child. What you saw was true in your memory, and I can tell that just by watching you. You don't know what it was, but you did see something that projected that imagery. So that would give me credibility to discuss that with you, so to speak, whenever I'm talking to someone. I also can tell whether they're lying or telling the truth or fabricating information. Anyway, the bottom line is the answer is yes, and they will often come to people in their childhood. When people say, I got abducted when I was 34, 35 years old, or 60, that almost never happens. It started when you were a child. You just remembered the last event at 35 or 50 or whenever. The fact is almost every one of these events starts in childhood. And it's not just you. If you check your family lineage and ask people privately, quietly, grandma, grandpa, and aunts and uncles quietly, they'll tell you some of the same stories that you're telling. But the fact is that the mantis being is extremely intelligent. It has an IQ of about 180. It is extremely intelligent. It's brilliant. It knows exactly what to do, and it can manipulate you. It decides whether it wants you to like, love, or love them, or hate, or fear them. It doesn't make any difference. Whatever the program is they're running, you're not in charge of that program. They are. And if they want you to love them and feel special and chosen and everything, you will. And if they choose for you not to, and they want you terrified all your life, you will. That'll be your response. But it's their choice. It isn't ours, so to speak. It's rare that that abductees get the choice. Contactees, in my opinion, kind of don't get a choice. You're just a victim of the experience, and hope and pray that it's a positive one. And a lot of times they will leave you with the imagery that it is positive. And in numerous cases I worked with the contactees, the events were not in fact positive, but they were left with the imagery, a screen memory that it was. And for them, I'm glad they gave them that imagery, but it often isn't. But the praying mantis being is very real. I've actually got an 8x10 photograph of a gray in the middle of an abduction encounter, and there's a praying mantis that's knocking him out of the way, trying to get to the humans inside the room. It's a beautiful, most beautiful color. You will not find it on the internet. It's this is not stuff that's that you're going to find on the internet. The stuff I have, you're not going to find it on the internet. That's been photoshopped and everything else. These are real. I actually have the negatives. I know what it was, and he is real. He's about 7.5 foot tall. He's quite real, and he is horrific. And he's a manipulator.
So, also Ron L. Hubbard kind of had he wrote about a lot of sci-fi stuff, but talked about these beings that were there that you couldn't see from millennia ago or whatever. What do you think about Hubbard and his, Scientology methods and stuff like that? That's a big question.
I think Hubbard and other people like him have been influenced. There are people that have. It's one of the reasons I went to India, because a good portion of that of the religion of the people in India, and I do not belittle them in any way, shape, or form. Many of my friends are Indian, and I do not belittle them. But it was funny because I have two Indians that were with me all the time I was there. One of them is very devout Hindu, and the other one is kind of like a secular progressive Hindu. I mean, take it or leave it, so to speak. And when I gave my view of the alien and what was going on and the gods and who they were and so on, the one said both of them said that makes more sense than anything in the world. But the other one said, it can't be that, because I said, because that's your God. He said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, but the point is, somebody got somebody. But I said, well, your God's out there nuking people, whole cities of people in the ancient text. I said, but I think people in history have been influenced and have been used. Julius Caesar was. 3 flying shields came over and knocked down a wall that he and his guys couldn't knock down to finish conquering the world, so to speak. And they helped him out. And well, it's because they're helping him out. If you saw what he was going to do to those people after he got through there, whoever was in those UFOs wasn't helping him. Wasn't helping the world. They were helping him, but not. But again, they have their own agenda, and it's their business. And I think L. Ron Hubbard and people like that make gods out of these entities or super beings, so that they need that, and it puts them in high position themselves. And there are people in the UFO community that are doing the same thing, in my opinion.
And there's people that say, Derrel, back, I think in the 40s or something, there was some type of treaty that was signed, secret treaty, so that a specific form of grays or a specific being could use the grays to do experimentation on humans in trade. We got technologies that we were able to reverse engineer. Is there truth to that?
I don't know. I wasn't there, but I did live at Holloman Air Force Base during the 60s for 13 years. in fact, I took martial arts training there. I was a part of the Armed Forces Judo team. It's a fascinating story. Do I think that the alien and the United States government have had some interaction? Yes, I do. Do I think they signed a contract? Well, first of all, I don't know a grade that can write. So that kind of doesn't make any sense. And if they lie and they lie consistently, why would anybody sign a contract with somebody that lies and lies consistently? They'll do anything you need done, and it doesn't make any whatever it takes to make you on their side, they'll do. But the fact is, they're going to win. That's the whole point. And if making you in charge makes them win, then you can be in charge. If deceiving you and making you think they're gods from other planets or other worlds, that's okay. If they need to be aliens from other planets, that's okay too. Whatever it is that makes you feel good and gets them their agenda, that's what's going to happen. It's just that simple. So I think we do have a breakaway space program. I'm very familiar with that. I think that's true. I think what Gary McKinnon discovered in his breach of our intelligence community, I think the reason the United States government, specifically the Central Intelligence Agency, is after him and wants him extradited into the United States is not so that they can punish him forever, but so they can hire him. And it's a simple system of conversion. If they get him, they'll arrest him and, of course, threaten him with 150 years in prison. But of course, if you want to work with us and work for us, I can guarantee you'll never go to jail. But you're going to do what I tell you to do, so to speak. That's going to be the offer if they ever catch him. Because what he did was get inside and he saw things he should have never, ever seen. He saw ships with manifest on it that didn't have human names on it. And some of them weren't in charge. Some of them were in charge. So the question is, whose craft and what craft are those? What Air Force base are they parked at? I don't think they are. So I think that's a true statement. I just don't know how much of it's true because I wasn't there.
No, that's fascinating. And I'm also thinking about the recent Elon Musk rocket launch where he supposedly launched a Tesla into space just to see how it looked. And somebody sent me a very fascinating email that, whether or not he actually launched that car into space or it's just a ploy, the theme behind it is he launched it into the Galactic Highway. And the person that sent me this email said there's more traffic that goes on in the Galactic Highway than anywhere on Earth. And whether or not I believe that, I still find it fascinating, just the kind of the symbology and the subliminal messaging that launching a car into space. And then maybe there's an inside joke to that. But where am I going with this? In 1958, it was written. It came out in it was 66 years ago. So whatever 66 years ago was, it was published. So that maybe that's 52. Yeah, 1952 is when it was published. It was written in 48. And it was called The Mars, something Mars. And it was a book written by where's it at here? Dang it. I had this thing written down. It was a book written 66 years ago. And guess who? It talks about a guide to Mars, von Braun or something like that. This rocket scientist from Germany wrote it. And he said that the leader of the Martian government was going to be named Elon. What's up with that? And the guy's friends with Walt Disney as well, the guy that wrote this book. So is this whole thing just, what's your thought on this Tesla launch? And I mean, I'm sure they're launching something out there, but are they really launching cars or, stuff for secret space programs? I know that's a big question.
In my opinion, and it's just an opinion because I don't know everything. If I did, I could tell you with great certainty all kinds of answers, but I don't. I'm somewhat limited here. In my opinion, there is the problem is, I was in the Central Intelligence Agency for 2 years. We did two things there. One was we developed cover stories to cover our data. You have to do that. Any intelligence community, Mossad, anybody has to do that. You can't tell everybody what you're doing or you're not an intelligence community. You're a gossip column. I mean, you can't keep secrets if you don't keep secrets. So you have to have your secrets, you have to have your operations, and then you have to develop cover stories for them. Such as we need a lot more tanks out there to to attack some country, and so we need another $50 billion. And you find out they're using the same old tanks they had. Where did the money go? It went somewhere else into a black operation. And this happens all the time. That's a cover story. We lied, and we lied consistently. That's something I'll just have to tell you. And if you're an intelligence community that doesn't lie, you're not an intelligence community. You're like I said, you're not in the intelligence business, that's for sure, and you're not very good at it. Because if you're telling the truth about everything, you don't know anything. And it's that simple. And people out there that tell me all this, they come on and, I have 14 levels of clearances and I have this. And I said, right. And I said, well, I had the top secret clearance in 1968 and it cost the government $250,000. I said, it's really interesting to me. I produced all my evidence to Art Bell of my top secret clearance and other things that I had. I did that on purpose so that I would never, he would be comfortable with that. And I said, after that, a bunch of people came on, said basically the same thing and produced absolutely nothing. I would like to see your documentation before I believe a bunch of stuff that you say. And you go out and tell everybody, basically make up a lot of this stuff. I mean, if I went out and did the same thing, have the same the clearance and everything, and then went out and made up a bunch of stories, people would probably buy it because I do have a top secret clearance. So everything I say must be true. Well, that all depends. If I'm still working for the company, and I'm not, if I was, I'd go out and make up a bunch of whoppers because I'd be paid to do that. But the fact is, I pay for all the stuff out of my own pocket, keep my family pretty much broke doing it. These surgeries that we do, the vast majority of these I pay for out of my own pocket. And I've got 10 of them we could do right now. But the problem is I don't have the money to do them all. So if the government was giving me all the money, that'd be great, but they're not. It just ain't working. So, but that's the bottom line is the intelligence community, when you're dealing with them, you're going to be dealing with misinformation, disinformation, lies, fabrications, prevarications, and all kinds of other things that are going to happen. And you're not, again, like the alien, you're not in charge. You just think you are.
Absolutely. And I wonder, would a vehicle like that be able to withstand the elements for even a few minutes without the glass cracking? I don't know. So you were in the military, you work for the CIA, you probably know a lot more about logistics and planes. And if you're up X amount of feet, how much damage, it's going to have with the pressure, et cetera. Would a car like that even be able to withstand the elements, or would it just get obliterated?
I have no idea. I would be guessing, and I hate to guess, and for me to tell them good information, good solid information, and then say, oh, I guess I don't know. It would be that I think it's this because it must be right because I must know everything. Well, I don't, but I have a DSP satellite specialist that I will ask, and he's an aeronautics engineer, and he will certainly be able to answer that for me, and I'll tell you when I get the information.
I appreciate the honesty and thank you so much for that. That would be great. And another question, this was from the audience, and the fantastic question. I was thinking the same thing. The moon is such an anomaly, and especially the dark side of the moon. What a great place for a race of beings to observe the zoo or the farm hiding in plain sight. So can you tell us about the moon and the connection with these beings, et cetera, in connection with the moon?
I haven't been to the moon lately, so
how long has it been?
I can only tell you what I think or what evidence I've seen from friends who are astronomers and others, and occasionally I'll get a tad of information from an intelligence level, and again have to filter it to see if I think it's correct or true or not, because they'll lie to me just as well. I think that the stuff on the backside of the moon is fabulous. It's incredible. If your audience has any interest, they can write me at derrelwsims@mac.com or go to my website, alienhunter.org, and simply click on Alien Hunter and then email me and say, send me the stuff about the moon that one of the top scientists in NASA said was there. And he didn't make it a secret. He said there were spires hundreds of feet tall, some of them taller, several times taller than the tallest buildings we have on planet Earth. He said, and they were all over the moon. Well, that's interesting. I don't remember seeing any in NASA pictures. but he said they were there, and he said they were different than the Mara, that the soil that they saw there. And he said they appear to be constructed out of something different. That's not even talking about the other anomalies, things and tunnels and weird things and domes that were hundreds of yards, if not some of them miles across. And that's not describing the stuff on the other side of the moon. This is just talking about the stuff that was there. Some of the astronauts described UFOs in the space above them while they were on the ground looking, picking up soil samples, and it said, there they are. And who do you think they're talking about? It's not someone else on the moon, but it's not them, it's someone else. So no question that stuff is real. I don't know. I have no idea who's in there. I don't know if we're in there and they're in there. So some of the latest words I got from some of the people who claim to be on the inside from the astronauts was simply this: we were ordered to stay away from the moon. And after our last exploration, which was a military project, we mapped the entire moon, left, and didn't go back. So why didn't we go back? I don't know.
Well, and that's another thing. I wonder why they haven't completely obliterated us yet with the technologies that they have. It makes me think of, you go back, the natives here and unfortunately in the United States were slaughtered because the technology that was brought over, guns versus bow and arrows, whatever. I mean, that's just a small piece of it. I get it. And it's kind of a bad analogy, but what happens when you have a race of beings that say, you know what, we've had enough. They're thinking too much for themselves. Their technology is too great. They're learning out, they're figuring out ways to travel the stars. We can't accept that. Let's annihilate them. What do you think?
My answer to that is very clear. There's two answers. One is it goes back to, in the UFO field, spiritually, there are only basically two views. There's a good and an evil. There's somebody out there is good and big and kicked somebody bad out, and they came down here and messed things up. That's my generic viewpoint. The second view is from a human standpoint here, is that you look at UFOs, they're either from other planets or they're from other dimensions or something else. And my view is they're from something else. The reason I don't think they're from other planets, and people go back and say, well, you're wrong because of the Drake equation. Drake equation basically says because there are billions and billions of stars and gillions of planets, some of them must be inhabited like this one. I'm not arguing that. They may. I'm just saying I hadn't found one yet. And then you got to go to, for many, when you look at that argument, it says if Drake's is true, which it should be based on the math, for many is saying that they would be everywhere. They were here a lot longer than we were. You'd be able to literally drive out in the desert of Arizona and see space stations out there from other planets. You'd be able to see aliens everywhere. They would be everywhere. And the question that Fermi has is, where are they? Which goes back to the possibility which Jacques Vallée, Keel, and others, and myself, think that it is in fact other world. It's not other planet, it's otherworldly, it's dimensional. And when UFOs just blink on and off, and I'll give you a hint, many times they're not just moving to another dimension, they're actually moving to the infrared or the ultraviolet range, which is invisible to you. And that is proven by the DSB satellite people. They still see them even though they're invisible. And sometimes they disappear because they literally didn't go underwater or outer space. They just went somewhere else, and they're not in the IR or the UV range at all. They went somewhere else, like virtual particles. They're here 1 minute and then they went to somewhere else, and they're not detectable. So in my view, you're dealing with something that's other than and different. And to answer the last part of your question, why don't they just blow us up and take us over? Because if you buy into the view that I have, that again, many of the ancient texts also support, that there is two different big factions out there, God and the devil, or God and Lucifer, or whatever you want to call it, whatever version you want to, labels you want to put on it. In my view, this place is being protected. It has been from the very beginning. Somebody came down here and infected it, and somebody has been tampering with it ever since. Nobody's going to take it over or do anything because somebody bigger than them said no. but they do have the ability to abduct people and do all kinds of things. And if you want, if before we quit, I'll talk to you about a couple of occasions where we actually had angelic beings actually show up in an abduction.
Oh yeah, that'd be great, Derrel. Thank you so much. And I was going to even bring up the CERN possibility because you said these different dimensions. And I'm wondering if CERN is actually somehow tapping into different realities, different spectrums, etc.
CERN is doing that, and I don't know whether we should be concerned or not, but,
Touché,
but maybe we should. Sometimes we may get into things over our head, like all those poor Army soldiers standing out in front of a 40-kiloton nuclear bomb we detonated out at Roswell, and they're standing out there with their helmets kind of tilting them down a little bit. We didn't really know that those guys shouldn't be standing out there. They're going to get radiated. And they're just anyway. I'll leave that up to the scientists to decide. I'm not in that field, so that's not my business.
One thing interesting I just wanted to say about that is if you read some of the ancient Vedas, the ancient texts, they describe this weapon that was given by the statue of the god Shiva. Then there's the Shiva god statue is actually at CERN. So I just find it interesting reading these ancient technologies. You know, you go back thousands of years, they're talking about science fiction, which is science reality, but it sounds like science fiction. And this weapon that was given by Shiva actually could change and destroy time itself. It could destroy dimensions and not just planets, but like solar systems. So it's kind of spooky.
My only question is, what is Shiva? What was Shiva's job?
Shiva, that's a fantastic question. Shiva was a higher deity, right? It could have been one of these upper level management beings that you're describing, because I think Shiva was also depicted as blue.
Shiva is a destroyer. That's what Shiva's job was. Okay, so we had a friend who was terrified of their abductions in Brazil, and they moved to this country and came to our house. And the lady asked me and my wife if we would let her stay with us for a while. And I said, and I asked my wife. She said yes. She said until I get a place to stay. She was running from her abductions, thinking if she left the country, they would leave her alone. If I went to America, they wouldn't be there. Well, bad story. So she comes to our home and stays there. And one morning she gets up and she's crying. And we said, what is wrong? And she says, they came last night. This one, he came and he scared me. And I picked up a piece of firewood off your fireplace and I was going to hit him and it scared him and he left. And she was crying. And I said, well, that's good. He left and that's great. You know, yay. No, they're all gone. And she said, no, you don't understand. My abductions always occur in threes. They'll come on the third day of the third month at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to come 3 times. That was the first one. They'll be back tonight. And I said, well, that's good. If they come back tonight, then I'll be waiting for them, and we'll see how the alien hunter deals with it. And I was up about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got to thinking about that, and I said, you know, I may be doing something rather stupid here. If they're coming 3 times and have already come once and I've already missed them, why don't I do something spiritual and see if there's something that can happen? So I prayed about it, and I prayed and had the most wonderful peace that passed all understanding come over me. And the message would simply go to bed. It's okay. Everything will be fine. And I thought, all right, we'll see. So I went to bed. Next morning, she gets up crying. My wife's looking at me and is like, uh-oh. And I said, so what happened? She said, you said you would be there. And I said, I did, and I didn't do that. That's true. I didn't do that. And I absolutely confess to that. And she says, he came back through the wall tonight and picked up a piece of stove wood like I was going to hit him this time. And she said something so horrific. I've never seen anything like it. It was so far beyond the alien, came through the wall. I was shaking and I dropped the firewood because there was nothing anyone could do. And she said, I stood there in stark terror. I've seen different types of alien entities, but I never saw anything like this. and it wasn't alien. And then she started crying. I said, well, why are you crying? It's all over. It's okay. And she said, no, 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 no. I'm crying because I'm happy. I said, why? She said, this angelic being came through the wall right behind him and stood by me. And she said the alien couldn't get out of there fast enough, and the horrible entity that was pure evil couldn't get out of there fast enough. They were nothing like the angelic being that came. And she cried and cried, and she said, he's kept me from me. Oh. She's crying and crying and crying. And then I told her what I did the night before, that I was told not to interfere, that it was going to be fine. So I was happy. I said, but however, since tonight is the third night, the alien hunter will be there in person. I guarantee it. I don't care who shows up. So she said, okay. So at 2:30 in the morning, she sits up, and we have a little pallet that she sleeps on in the living room. And she sits up she's shaking, crying, and saying, oh my God, she's really scared. And I said, go back to sleep. I'm here. And I'm sitting there with a samurai sword that has got over $1,000 worth of work done on just the blade. I mean, I can shave with this thing. We're going to call it sashimi, sliced meat. So I'm waiting, and then at 3 o'clock in the morning, she sets up in slow motion and looks over at me and says, they know you're here. And I said, yes, and I know that they know that I know that they know that I'm here. I said, one of these days, somebody's going to be stupid enough to come on the other side of that wall, and they're going to wish they'd never done that. And scaring people half to death, and terrifying children and women, and doing terrible things to people may not be nearly as funny whenever they meet the alien hunter. And I said, so now we all know that I'm here. And I said, it doesn't take much of a so-called super mega being out there from another planet to scare little children and women. That's why don't you come on the other side of the wall and scare me for a while and see how that works out. Nobody showed up. But anyway, that was the end of the story. But that's not the only. Angels are very rare in these events. But every time they do, Calvin Parker himself, that famous case, Calvin Parker, I don't know if you remember his case, in one of his last events, an angelic being showed up and scared every alien. They were all looking for a place to hide on that ship. Calvin Parker tells a very funny story about that. But anyway, that's very rare for them to show up. But when they do, I guarantee you, it changes the whole dynamic of who's in charge.
That's fascinating. And it almost, to me, sounds like you have, would you say you're a Christian? You have did you go to church growing up, or is it just the research you've done has kind of led you to be more of a Christian than you were before?
No, being a Christian, okay. If you want to be a Buddhist, you go do Buddhist stuff. You study and learn to be a Buddhist and so on. If you want to be whatever, any of these different things, isms, you got to join, you got to do all these things. To be a Christian, all you have to do is accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior, because he came to save mankind. If that narrative is true, and I think that it is, then trusting him as your savior makes you a Christian. It's not what you joined, it's who you joined. You joined him. A church is a group of Christians. Does that make sense? In other words, you can be a Christian on a desert island by yourself. You don't need a church. You don't need anybody. It's who you received. It's the gift that you received of eternal life from him. It's not a religion you bought into. And people, and you got all kinds of flavors of people who want to do it this way, do it that way, and so on. I mean, Baptists and Pentecostals and so on. Those are just different viewpoints of the same thing. They've had the same experience. So, but any ism you can join. You can join Buddhism, but you got to join. I mean, you got to do this. You got to follow the Eightfold Noble Path, and so on and so on and so on. To be a Christian, it's not something you join. It's a person that you accepted his forgiveness, his sacrifice for his life and for your life, and forgive you of your sins and so on. That's the Christian viewpoint. So from that viewpoint, I got quote unquote saved when I was 6 years old. I met Jesus Christ in my experience at 6 years old, and had that experience. That's the bottom line. I didn't. my parents took me to church after that, and I didn't have a clue what they're talking about, but I knew all about the one that I had given my heart to, my life to, even as a child at 6 years old. That's the difference between two. It's not a religion I joined. That joined these Baptists or whoever later, you know, a nice bunch of people and all that, and it had similar experiences. But the point is, it's not a religion you joined, it's a person that you accepted. That's the difference between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. Right on, Derrel. And, you know, we've got over 1,200 people listening to this podcast right now. Nothing but accolades, good things to say. You guys should definitely check out Derrel's website. I mean, you've written several books. I'd really like to see maybe a mini series come out of you having an opportunity to go, oversee an implant removal or something like that. It'd be fascinating to be a part of something like that. And I would really like to help promote it in any way possible. We've got over 200,000 subscribers here on the Leak Project. It's getting about 3 million views a month right now. So if there's anything that I could do to help out with your endeavors and getting to the truth and exposing it, please feel free to let me know. And it's just such an honor to speak with you, Derrel. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Well, I really admire you, and I like the way that you take care of your listeners, and you really got a wonderful audience. And any of them want to write me personally, they're welcome to. You can go to alienhunter.org, click on Alien Hunter. I answer all my emails. If I don't answer you, write again because I didn't get it. Because I answer all my emails. And the stuff I'll send you, the vast majority of it is free. I don't sit around and charge people for a bunch of stuff. Like I said, in fact, we just came back from India, conducted the implant surgery, the first one out of the country in India. And perhaps we can do a story on that sometime. But if we are looking at some TV opportunities, and I've got cases that will absolutely stun you if I told you about them. Not the stuff we just talked about, but cases that we haven't talked about. And that's the ones I leave for the TV program.
Wow. Well, I want to be a part of that. Then I'm going to start making some phone calls because that sounds like some fascinating information. Fascinating.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your program. I love your listeners, and whether they agree with me or not, I hope the information I provided will allow them to see things from a different point of view. Because I wear 7 different hats whenever I do an investigation, and each of those hats, some of them even differ with each other. So that's okay. It gives me 14 sets of eyes to look at things.
I want to close on this then. I'm so glad you brought up 7 different hats. Ladies and gentlemen, you might be looking at this tinfoil hat. Yes, that's right. This is a custom handmade tinfoil hat. Thank you, Julian. There were 33 of these produced and signed for authenticity. They've also got liners that are going to come with them that help protect, like an EMF shielding that goes from like all the way up to 30 gigahertz from these fabrics. Just crazy. So if you want to make a bid, I'm actually auctioning off number 6 of 33 right now. So click the link, and thank you for everything, everybody. Be excellent to each other. Thank you for your support. Be like Bill and Ted. Let's save the world by being excellent to each other. Why not? Be the change you want to see.
Hear, hear.